Welcome to Learning Libraries. This is Anjana starting a new video on grade 8 social science CBSE, and this is chapter 1 how, when and where. This video is being posted after a gap of a year, and I'm extremely sorry for that, but now you'll be getting some regular videos, and I wish the subscribers that they could have time to watch the whole video. It's about chapter 1 from CBSE. So I'll just start the lesson. Have you all wondered why we all take things for granted? Because of the assumption that things will stay forever and will always remain the same. Let us proceed with things. So if you look at this page, in page 1 there is a figure. You can see in this picture that a person is handing over a document to another person. So what is happening over here? Let's read and find out. So figure 1 says that Brahmins offering the Sastras to Britannia frontispiece to the first map produced by James Rennell, 1782. So Rennell was asked by Robert Clive to produce maps of Hindustan. An enthusiastic supporter of British conquest of India, Rennell saw the preparation of maps as essential to the domination. The picture here tries to suggest that Indians willingly gave over their ancient text to Britannia, the symbol of British power, as if asking her to become the protector of Indian culture. So, it's this picture shows us how Indians have handed over their historical knowledge base to the Britishers, and Britishers have taken it as a symbol of domination. That is how to overpower Indians by drawing map. Map making skill is very essential and was the most important thing for the survival of Britishers in India. A country as vast as India could not have been dominated if there was no mapping skill. So, James Rennell has to be credited for that. And Britishers have taken keen interest in the maps because they wanted to know each and every part of India and were interested in complete domination. So, there was a time when historians were fascinated with dates. There were heated debates about the dates on which rulers were crowned or battles were fought. In the common sense notion, history was synonymous with dates. You may have heard people saying, I find history boring because it is all about memorizing dates. Is such a conception true? Basically, history is certainly about changes that occur over time. It is about finding out how things were in the past and how things have changed. As soon as we compare the past with the present, we refer to time. We talk of before and after. So basically, nothing in life stays as it is. Nothing in life stays as it is. There is a need for acceptance. The change is the only constant. Changes will happen, and these changes determine the past, and they bring a new outlook towards a future, better future, or it could change the whole history. So we have to understand what were these changes and how these changes were recorded, how people used to record these changes. Most importantly, it's not only about the changes that happen, we have to understand where it is mentioned so that we don't get confused. And there are proofs for certain events in life cannot be identified on exact dates. So, living in the world, we do not always ask historical questions about what we see around us. We take things for granted as if what we see has always been in the world we inhabit. Most of us have our moments of wonder when we are curious and we ask questions that are actually historical. Watching someone sip a cup of tea at a roadside tea stall, you may wonder, when did people begin to drink tea or coffee? Looking out of the window of a train, you may ask yourself, when were railways built and how did people travel long distances before the age of railways? Reading the newspaper in the morning, you may be curious to know how people got to hear about things before newspaper began. So these are all some revolutionary changes that brought a lot of revolutionary tools that brought a lot of changes in the history, whether it was newspaper or tea. Tea was a beverage introduced in India and people started drinking it. Newspaper became a source of knowledge. Even today it continues to be a great source of knowledge. So let's see another figure over here. It's figure 2. It says advertisements create taste. Advertisements help create taste. Old advertisements help us understand how markets for new products were created and new tastes were popularized. This is the advertisement for Lipton tea that suggests royalty all over the world is associated with this tea. In the background, you see the outer wall of an Indian palace, while in the foreground, seated on the horseback, is the third son of Queen Victoria of Britain, Prince Arthur, who was given the title of Duke of Connaught. So, this is the picture. You can see Lipton tea, and tea became a symbol, a new beverage being introduced. All such historical questions refer back to notion of time. But time does not always have to be precisely dated in terms of particular year or month. Sometimes it is actually incorrect to fix precise dates to the process that happened over a period of time. People in India did not begin drinking tea one fine day. They develop a taste for it over time. There can be no one clear there can be no one clear date for such process such as this. Similarly, we cannot fix one single date on which British rule was established or the national movement started or changes that took place within the economy and society. All these things happened over a stretch of time. We can only refer to a span of time, an approximate period over which particular changes become visible. So we cannot just exactly pinpoint, oh, yeah, this is the particular date that the event happened. For certain events in life cannot be identified on an exact date. They happen over a period of time. We have to understand that. And also we can see here clearly that advertisements started playing an important role in the past. They showcased products. So let's continue reading this. Why then do we continue to associate history with a string of dates? This association has a reason. There was a time when history was an account of battles and events. It was about rulers and their policies. Historians wrote about the year a king was crowned, the year he married, the year he had a child, the year he fought a particular war, the year he died, and the year the next ruler succeeded to the throne. For events such as these, specific dates can be determined, and in histories such as these, debates about date continue to be important. Many a times livelihood of people are undermined. Okay, basically you can't even know what would have been the life of a fisherman or a potter or any other person doing manual labor. We can only know about the kings, the queens, and all the important political figures. We never know about the grassroots people who actually do the labor but never get a space in the history. As you have seen in the history textbook of the past 2 years, historians now write about a host of other issues and other questions. They look at how people earned their livelihood, what they produced and ate, how cities developed and markets came up, how kingdoms were formed and new ideas spread, and how cultures and society changed. So, which dates? So, which dates are we referring to? That's the question over here. So many dates are there. So, by what criteria do we choose a set of dates as important? The dates we select, the dates around which we compose our story of the past, are not important on their own. They became vital because we focus on a particular set of events as important. If our focus of study changes, we begin to look at new issues. A new set of dates will appear significant. Consider an example. In the histories written by British historians in India, the rule of each governor general was important. These historians began with the rule of the first governor general Warren Hastings and ended with the last viceroy Lord Mountbatten. In separate chapters, we read about the deeds of others. So you can see a picture, figure 3 of Warren Hastings became it says Baron Hastings became the first Governor General of India in 1773. While history books narrate the deeds of governor generals, biographies glorified them as persons, and paintings projected them as powerful figures. So, what do we gather by this? Biographies, books, and paintings, they gave a new color to the British rule. They became an important tool, as an asset through which they can establish their domination and also project an image in the world outside. All these viceroys were very important. Okay, so Hastings, Wellesley, Pentic, Dalhousie, Canning, Lawrence, Lytton, Ripon, Curzon, Harding, Irwin. It was a seemingly never ending succession of governor generals and viceroys. All the dates in these history books were linked to these personalities, to their activities, policies, achievements. It was as if there was nothing outside their lives that was important for us to know. The chronology of their lives marked the different chapters of the history of British India. Can we not write about the history of this period in a different way? How do we focus on activities of different groups and classes in Indian history within the format of this history of governor generals? When we write history or a story, we divide it into chapters. Why do we do it? Do this? It is to give each chapter some coherence. It is to tell a story in a way that makes some sense and can be followed. In the process, we focus only on those events that help us to give shape to the story we tell. In the histories that revolve around the life of British governor generals, the activities of Indians simply do not fit. They have no space. What then do we do? Clearly, we need another format for our history. This would mean that the old dates will no longer have significance they had earlier. A new set of dates will become more important for us to know. So yeah, same set of dates never work out and the old dates became irrelevant because as these governor generals perform their duties, new events will happen and dates have to be done in according to the events happening. So, how do we periodize? In 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a massive 3 volume work, A History of British India. In this, he divided Indian history into 3 periods: Hindu, Muslim, and British. This periodization came to be widely accepted. Can you think of any problem with this way of looking at Indian history? Why do we try and divide history into different periods? Why do so in an attempt to capture the characteristics of a time. It is central feature as they appear to us. So the term through which we periodize, that is demarcate the difference between periods, become important. They reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the significance of the changes from one period to another. Next, Mill thought that all Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than Europe. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindu and Muslim despots ruled the country. Religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitious practices dominated social life. British rule, Mill felt, could civilize India. To do this, it was necessary to introduce European manners, arts, institutions, and laws in India. Mill, in fact, suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. For India was not capable of progress without British help. In this idea of history, British rule represented all the forces of progress and civilization. The period before British rule was one of darkness. Can such a conception be accepted? So basically, Britishers tried to picturize India as a very uncivilized, unprogressed society, so that when they bring out the changes, the world doesn't look upon them as a dominator, rather change bringer, or some people emancipating the others from a very downtrodden position. In any case, can we refer any period of history as Hindu or Muslim? Did not a very variety of faith exist simultaneously in this period? Why should we characterize an age only through religion of the rulers of the time? To do so is to suggest that the lives and practices of others do not really matter. We should also remember that even rulers in ancient India did not all share the same faith. So basically, British did not want to portray all the differences in India. They wanted to show that Indians have no history, no culture, and the Britishers are trying to bring changes. They are trying to bring the Christianity in India. They are trying to establish a lot of important changes. Moving away from British classification, historians have usually divided India into ancient, medieval, and modern. This division too has its problem. It is a periodization that is borrowed from the West, where the modern was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity: science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. Medieval was a term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. Can we uncritically accept this characterization of the modern period to describe the period of our study? As you will see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality, freedom, nor or liberty. Nor was the period one of economic growth and progress. Many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. Many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. So, what is colonial? In this book, you will read about the way the British came to conquer the country, establish their rule, subjugating local Nawabs and Rajas. You will see how they established control over the economy and society, collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought the goods they wanted at low prices, produced crops they needed for export, and you will understand the changes that came about as a consequence. You will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and tastes, customs and practices. When the subjugation of one country by another leads to these kinds of political, economic, social, and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. You will, however, find that all classes and groups did not experience these changes in the same way. That is why the book is called Our Pasts in plural. That means it is interconnected, not a single entity. It's not about just a single group, it's about multiple groups, and each group's experiences collide and create varied experiences and changes. So how do we know? Okay, how do we know? What sources do historians use in writing about the last 250 years of Indian history? So administration produces the record. So first question is, who produces the record? Whatever we say, it's the data. So who handles that? It would be the British administration. So one important source is the official records of the British administration or the British bureaucracy. So whatever these officials used to type, print and document, they became a record. The British believed that the act of writing was important. Every instruction, plan, policy, decision, agreement, investigation has to be clearly written up. This was done. Once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. This conviction produced an administrative culture of memos, notings, and reports. The British also felt that all the important documents and letters need to be carefully preserved, so they set up rooms attached to all administrative institutions. The village Tahsildars office, the collectorate, the commissioner's office, the provincial secretariats, the new law courts, all had their record rooms. Specialized institutions like archives, museums were also established to preserve important records. So basically, keeping notes, documents became popular. When today we file documents in alphabetical order for better access, so they were all dependent, as India was a very new country for them. So they had to record and file each and every small new experiences, events, changes, everything has to be noted and archived. So this became a very great change in ways things were preserved. And even today we have archives all over the museums in India. Letters and memos that moved from one branch of administration to another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archives. You can also study the notes and reports that district officials prepared, or the instructions and directives that were sent by officials at the top to provincial administrators. In the early years of 19th century, these documents were clearly copied out and beautifully written by calligraphists, that is, by those who specialize in the art of beautiful writing. But by the middle of 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceedings of each government departments. In the early years of 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out by beautifully written calligraphists, that is, by those who specialize in art of beautiful writing. By the middle of the 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of the same records were printed as proceedings of each departments. So you can see a building over here. This is the National Archives of India that came up in 1920s. When New Delhi was built, the National Museum and National Archives were located close to the Viceregal Palace. This location reflects the importance of these institutions in British imagination. So they were very keen on documentation and archiving it, preserving it. It's like a temple for them, for their base. Whatever they did, whatever they wanted to do, had been meticulously recorded and preserved. So we can see there's a source given here, reports to the This is one type of a letter or a note. So you can see how detailed it is, and there's the address given and how and to which person it is addressed. It's a letter, so it is to some kind of report. The topic here is reports to the Home Department. In 1946, the colonial government in India was trying to put down a mutiny that broke out on the ships of the Royal Indian Navy. Here is a kind of report the Home Department got from different dockyards. Bombay. So basically, they got a lot of small um, descriptions, reports from different dockyards across India. Especially, we can see here three of them. So, first is Bombay. Arrangements have been made for army to take over the ships and establishments. Royal Navy ships are remaining outside the harbor. Karachi. 1301 mutineers were under arrest and a few more strongly suspected are to be arrested. All establishments are under military guard. Visakhapatnam. The position is completely under control and no violence has occurred. Military guards have been placed on ships and establishments. No further trouble is expected except that a few men may refuse to work. So basically, this is a report which we got from different dockyards, and it is addressed to the Director of Intelligence HQ, Indian Command, India Command, Situation Report number 7 file. So you can see how detailedly they are filing it. File number 5 bar 21 bar 46, Home Political Government of India. So next thing that is very important is survey. So before that, we can just see the picture or the figure 5, a custard apple plant of 1770s. Botanical gardens and natural history museums established by the British collect plant specimens and information about their uses. Local artists were asked to draw pictures of these specimens. Historians are now looking at the way such information was gathered and what this information reveals about the nature of colonization. We are talking about a time when there was no Google or no good cameras, so people would have wandered and collected information about different herbs and made them into some knowledgeable data in the national parks. Surveys became very important. The practice of surveying also became common under the colonial administration. The British believed that a country has had to be properly known for it before it could be effectively administered. By the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. In the village, revenue surveys were being conducted. Efforts was to know the topography, the soil, the quality, the flora and the fauna, and the local histories and the cropping pattern. All the facts seen as necessary to know about to administer the region. From the end of 19th century, census operations were held every 10 years. These prepared detailed records of the number of people in all provinces of India, noting information on caste and religion and occupation. There were many surveys: botanical surveys, zoological surveys, archaeological surveys, anthropological surveys, forest surveys. So different type of surveys used to be there, and census is still a part of India. Still, in every 10 years, records are being maintained of how many people are there. This gives an idea to the government they have to do and what to be focused on. So what official records do not tell us. There are some things that records never tell us. We don't know about the other side of the coin. So from this vast corpus of records, we can get to know a lot. But we must remember that these are official records. They do not tell us about. They tell us about the official thought, what they were interested in, what they wished to preserve for posterity, these records do not always help us understand what other people in the country felt and what lay behind their actions. Figure 7. The rebels of 1857. Images Images need to be carefully studied, for they project the viewpoint of those who create them. This image can be found in several illustrated books produced by British after the 1857 rebellion. The caption at the bottom says, "Mutinous sepoys share the loot." In British representations, the rebels appear as greedy, vicious, and brutal. So basically, they try to picturize always Indians as uncivilized, because that is a way to sustain their dominance. They don't want people, give people chance to even support Indians, because news about India reached worldwide. For that, we need to look elsewhere. When we begin to search these sources, we find them in plenty, though they are more difficult to get than official records. We have diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims and travelers, autobiographies of important people, personalities, and popular booklets that were sold in local bazaars. As printing spread, newspapers were published and issues were being debated in public. Leaders and reformers wrote to spread their ideas. Poets and novelists wrote to express their feelings. All these sources, however, were produced by those who were literate, and from these we will not be able to understand how history was experienced and lived by tribals and the peasants, the workers in the mines, or the poor on the streets. Getting to know their life is more difficult task. So in history we see the undermining of a vast group because of their livelihood, because of not being able to reach, and because of the just because to camouflage their difficulties and project them as some unwanted actions or uncivilized ways in which Indians deal. So you can see another source. So this is a newspaper uh, report. So not fit for human consumption. Newspapers provide account of the movements in the different part of the country. Here is a report of a police strike in 1946. More than 2,000 policemen in India, in Delhi, refused to take their food on Thursday morning as a protest against their low salaries and the bad quality of food supplied to them from the police lines. As the news spread to the other police station, the men there also refused to take food. One of the strikers say, "The food supplied to us from public line is not fit for human consumption. Even cattle would not eat the chapatis and dal which we have to eat." Hindustan Times, 22nd March 1946. So basically we see newspaper gaining a lot of weightage, and they became a source of knowledge, a source of uh, getting out their pleas through letters, telling story about their problems. Not everybody could reach the newspaper articles, but those who do reach them get benefited out of them. So there we come to the end of this chapter. Hope you have learned a lot about history, and basically we talk about surveys, maps, reports, newspapers, and how, while they rather give us an official understanding and even autobiographical understanding, we don't get the whole picture, as not everybody's history is being mentioned, and even there is a biasness where India is being portrayed as uncivilized and British being the protector and people who bring the changes. So with that, I'll end this video, and I just want to say subscribe to my channel, and I'll be bringing a lot more videos and continuing these chapters regularly. Thank you.